It has been my greatest pleasure to be at this Republic meeting. Actually, it's my second time because I was the jury member of the BOBS, the Chinese jury member of the BOBS contest. So we just finished our, the nominations and also the end results. Very, I should say, very unfortunately, the Chinese nominations failed, have been failed to get the awards. But we had a lot of fun, and also we get to know a lot of creative projects in all kinds of, social protest, social learning, social communication, and all kinds of that. So today I'm going to talk about the the digital culture, the Chinese internet. What does it look like, especially in terms of its relations to politics and society in China. So we have the figures. It's 650 million web users, internet users. Actually, it's more than the total population of the United States and Japan. So it's a huge population.
Too much hugging.
Sorry for this. Too much hugging. So with such a population, not only China's internet has become a contentious space between the state and the society. So we're talking about this all the time. But also, it also given voices to various social groups living within the country. The different ideologies, different classes, ethnicities, and religions. So giving China's vastness and particularities, these are also, we can call them intercultural issues, even it's within a country. So a question of paramount importance will be, how can the Chinese people leverage the full potential of the internet to make this country a more civil, more tolerant, and safer place? So that's a very important question. So I'm going to start with the year of 2010. So that year, the internet was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by an American institute for helping advance dialogue, debate, and consensus. So in China, the internet is certainly playing exactly that role. Because of China's special political environment, online activities have a political meaning that few other countries may not have. This is mainly out of two reasons. First, we lack a constitutional platform for people to voice, their the will and their opinions, because we do not have regular elections. In other words, there is no formalized way to channel popular feeling as well as discontent. So leaving most of the people outside of the decision-making process of the public affairs. And on the other hand, the legal channel is also very lacking. We need an independent judicial system. But right now, without the rule of law to support, support the society, citizens are often left at the mercy of self-serving officials. And then the third point is that we do not have independent press. From the perspective of the tradition of the press freedom, we do not have that tradition. So we used to call it a kind of a supervision by public opinion, which is essentially an extension or supplement of the parties and government's power. So therefore, China's media cannot be viewed as an independent public watchdog. So from the political and the legal and the media side, we can say citizens are very afraid of offending government officials who have the power to affect their lives. But with the internet, people finally find a public space relatively free from worry or restraint. Thus, a floodgate of emotions and critics open with a very big bang. So that explains why the public opinion on the internet seems to be in a much more excessively excited mood than in some other media. And people know that China has a very stringent internet censorship, might be the most stringent in the whole world. Although such is the case, new technologies and applications have still managed to create new spaces for discussion and exchange of ideas. Substantial change has been made to the Chinese public sphere, in which a wide range of speakers have access to a diverse public. People have got used to reading news, searching for information, expressing opinions, debating current affairs, and organizing activities online. So I already point to the figure, the 650 million internet users. So with so many people online, so active netizens and vibrant online communities have gained the ability to influence or even change the reality. So beginning in the new century, I mean roughly after 2003, actually, because that year there was a milestone case. This guy called Sunjigang, he was 27 years old. He was picked up by the police during a random identity check and died in custody in Guangzhou. So this actually, this story caused a national outcry. I would say this is the first, public campaign who are trying to make justice. So as a result of this death, the detention and repatriation regulation under which this university graduate has been held was abolished by China's State Council. So after that, we can see a decade of rights advocacy began. The new private online ventures opened up alternative space where people could express their opinions outside official discourse. So since then, we have witnessed waves after waves of public opinion, public expression, and people are debating issues, and people are initiating protests, which made new challenge in a nation where information has routinely been censored by the government. So there are a lot of cases, mostly cases involving power abuse, corruption, crime, and social injustice. Not every case went to how the public would like them to go, but together, those cases resulted in creating a new form of public opinion in China. So to talk about the rise of public opinion in China, I would love to give you a kind of historic perspective to trace back, to the very ancient Chinese history. So in ancient China, during the Warring States period, we have a famous statesman called Sunjigang. He was a statesman of the state of Qin. He advocated strengthening the king's power. So he believed that when strong states aim at annexation, while weak ones are concerned to maximize their defense, it was necessary to adopt strong laws. So, to ensure that people were well taught, Shangyang appointed legal officers to teach all people throughout the state. In other words, Shangyang empowered these officers to take over the educational system. So he called this set of theories and practices the unified teaching, so which banned all thoughts and opinions against the laws and his doctrine. Then we have another philosopher, political philosopher called Han Fei. He was a philosopher known for developing the framework of the Chinese legalism, which is a very famous, school of thought before the Qin dynasty. Han Fei inherited Shangyang's unified teaching and believed that people within the state's boundary, when practicing persuasion and eloquence, must always conform to the law. So he has a very famous saying that the literati disturb laws by means of letters, and martial heroes transgressed prohibitions by means of violence, yet the king still treats them both with propriety. And that was the cause of disorder. So a marked practice of disturbing laws by means of letters was being half-hearted towards the king and engaged in private studies. Therefore, such practice must be banned. The gangs dissolved, their partisans dispersed. So he then put forward the renowned legalist proposal for education. Very important. In the state of the enlightened sovereign, there is no literature written on bamboo slips, but the law is the only teaching. There is no quoted sayings of the early kings, but the magistrates are the only instructors. So he failed to implement his proposal, but his fellow scholar called Li Si, he was a great minister of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. Li Si finally pushed the edict throughout the Qin Empire. So Li Si proposed to burn all the copies of the classic of poetry, the classic of history, and the writings of hundreds of schools of philosophy. So under Li Si's proposal, the books that have exemption are those on medicine, divination, agriculture, and forestry. And those who have interest in laws shall instead study from law officers. So as a result, Li Si brought to an extreme of the belief of Shangyang and Han Fei that the law is only teaching and the law officers are the only instructors. So why I'm saying all this? Because ever since China's rulers have enforced an orthodox code of learning, religious beliefs and social norms in order to put these recommendations into practice. So we can say through thousands of years, we adopted Qin's practice. For example, Mao Zedong, which is the leader for New China, he once remarked, all dynasties adopted Qin's way of rule. That means Qin Shi Huang's way of rule. The residue of the system can still even be seen today in contemporary China. For example, Chinese today are very familiar with a slogan called "Listen to the party," which is actually listen to the party officials. It's a modern version of law officers are the only instructors. In the Cultural Revolution, the great leader, that is Mao Zedong himself, was also referred to as a great instructor. So they're the same. The leader and the instructor is the same. So he managed both politics and people's thoughts. To manage thoughts was to eliminate dissidents from public opinion. And in the 1950s, Mao started a campaign against anti-revolutionary clique, which mostly are intellectuals. In this first purge of intellectuals after 1949, Mao Zedong said there should be a unified public opinion, as well as one set of unified laws. So by that he means, if you want to have a unified public opinion, you must enforce the unified laws. So the unification of public opinion was actually being ensured by the state apparatus and by laws. So expansive government control over ideology and severe restrictions on the freedom of expression were institutionalized and exerting very long-lasting influence. That was the case until after the Cultural Revolution, because after that, China's political atmosphere became far more open, with much bolder criticisms and challenges to corrupt leaders and bureaucracy. So the Chinese Communist Party policy of unification of public opinion at this stage is beginning to change. So it was changed into the guidance of the public opinion. You can see the different wording. So which means to encourage some kinds of public opinion while suppressing others. So the propaganda department often told the tightly monitored state media that they should be not reporting on the wrong points of view, and instead should cover positive stories that promote socialist values. So this situation began to change in the 1990s when the internet emerged in China. So after a long way, we came to the 1990s. But the real turning point actually came in the first decade of the 21st century, when social media such as blogs and macro-blogs gained popularity. So what do social media mean for China? It is a gathering place for citizen journalism, allowing local news to become national. It is a home for public discourse, a national arena that transcends place and class as never before. It is a source of citizen action where the people unite and struggle together to improve society. In other words, not only for the first time in history we now have public opinion, but also this public opinion has gone through a structural transformation. Because on the one hand, you have the guidance of public opinion, which are from the mainstream state-owned media organs. On the other hand, you have a wave of popular opinion emerging in the Chinese cyberspace. So there were a lot of observers who actually captured such a structural transformation. I quote the former Xinhua News Agency, the former chief editor. His name is Nan Zhenzhong. He said there are now two public opinion fields in contemporary China. One is the official field, represented by party-controlled traditional media, and the other is the internet. In the former, media resources are highly concentrated in the hands of the few, while in the latter, gatekeeping is greatly weakened. And also, on the internet, you can see a lot of anonymous comments, which gave the commentators more sense of security and a great desire for expression. As a result, the diversity of thoughts, lifestyles, and cultures is far more obvious on the internet. And when I was talking about this, the so-called two public opinion fields, you can see discussions in those two fields have very different topics, types of discourse and forms. So the official media claim to represent mainstream public opinion, which according to People's Daily, they are promoting mainstream values of the state or the party. But public opinion on the internet has the opposite effect. The official public opinion field focuses on how the government creates a so-called harmonious society rather than how civic culture develops. While the public opinion field of the internet explores how citizens are motivated to influence the current political system through their creativity and initiative. So online commentators have never been as active as they have in the past several years. Any significant incident, be it domestic or international, can give rise to a huge online discussion, arousing passions and stimulating actions that governments, institutions, and public figures cannot ignore. Until recently, such a phenomenon was quite beyond the imagination. So the new interactive media enables anyone, anywhere to observe the social surroundings and inject a thought, a criticism, or a concern into public discussions. Different forms of networks in the public sphere are in the making, through which everyone can speak, question, and investigate without turning to traditional media. It also influences agenda setting, starting new political discussions, as well as rearranging the issues that concern most people. So when I was, talking with my German colleagues who are working in German media, so I found out a very prominent difference in the way of viewing new media. Because in Germany, you might not put so much trust in the new media, but in China, it's just the opposite. People don't trust traditional media, but they trust new media very much. Since time is very limited, I just came to some of the end remarks. I mentioned in 2010, the internet was nominated for Nobel Peace Prize. That year, actually, the prize did not go to internet, but it did go to a Chinese who has been absent from the ceremony due to his efforts in getting more freedom of speech in China. So you can see from the television, there is an empty chair, and that empty chair is like a metaphor. A friend recalled something that the Nobel Prize winner Liu Xiaobo has said to him many years ago. So Liu Xiaobo said, "We are very lucky to live in this time and this place that is China. It may be difficult for us, but at least we do have a chance to make a very, very large difference. Most people in their lifetimes are not offered this kind of opportunity." So to put it in this way, so now we are out of the silent society. So people now have their voices also, they have their channels. So that can accumulate social capital, which was so necessary for China to go into the democratic direction in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions, or shall I ask the first question? Okay.
Yong, thank you for your interesting talk with this little trip back into the past, which of course explains a lot. But let me ask you one question about, you said there is a new public sphere arising out of the social media in China, and people put a lot of trust in it and put a lot of time actually in it. And I was always impressed how lively the interaction between these huge communities in China regularly are. But another thing that sprang to mind is that as lively as they are and as vast as this space is, it seems to, because of censorship, it seems to have no memory. It's very difficult to refer to events in the past. It's very difficult to get some kind of continuity that makes it possible, I would say, to develop a sense of history or current history. What can the Chinese public intellectuals do to remedy this problem?
I think you are very right to the point. Actually, the former professor of economics called Yang Xiaokai, he wrote a paper about this. He found out that the dissident movement in China is not a continuous process, because the people in 1989 they know nothing about 1979, and people afterward know nothing about 1989. So that's exactly your point. So the history is being reshaped, and the memories are erased, and a lot of things young people even do not know. I think it will be a tremendous task for, if you say, the public intellectuals to try to, correct this kind of very tragic phenomena. So it takes education, and also it takes a lot of history, narrative, historical narrative. You have to get a lot of things which are concealed by the government. You have to make it visible, make it public. But at least I'm in one way I'm optimistic, because now you have so many channels to send the histories out. People can read from all kinds of sources. For example, one of the key events is the anti-Japanese war. So the war is usually to be narrated only by the communist part. So the Kuomintang, they say they're not good at all. So it's because the Communist Party that we win the war against the Japanese. But now you can see a lot of rewriting of this part. So the young people, they know that the war is not looks like what the school textbook is describing. So in this sense, I think it will bind by the real one will show. So I'm optimistic on this regard. Yeah.
I have one more question, but maybe somebody in the audience also. So I would step back if you have a. Well, my question is, you said that that the time of the silence is over, and now the voices can be heard. But on the other hand, I remember the number 680 million. So 680 million voices. And how do you think that the democratization on local levels, or where people can connect the internet with their local life, or even on the bigger scale, I think it's very loud when 680 million people start having voices online, but how do you think will this fall in a democratic order? Or can it be like a cacophony of everybody expresses him or herself? So how do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. Actually, we have an election system that you can elect very low-level officials at township level. So and in the cities, it's a district level, but not high above, because the government won't allow people to do that. But several years ago, when the election year is due, every 5 years. So there are a bunch of people who actually, pronounced that they will be running for public office for the local, district or local towns. So they announced their decision actually on social media. So they organize teams to support them. So they publish posters, and they promise that if they are elected, they will do a lot of good things to the neighborhood or to the communities. So it's I think it's a very beginning of how people can use social media to try to not just to discuss national issues, but also to make real changes in the communities. But very unfortunately, those what we call the independent candidates, actually, all of them failed, because government will not allow them to do that. So this political path actually is blocked. But still, you can do some other things, like if you're a property owners, you do a lot of things to try to protect your properties. And if the environmental pollution actually is affecting your community, and you make protests to against them, and also people just beginning to push for the transparency of the local taxation or the local budget. So they're doing these kind of things. It will be a very slow process, but it's starting.
But I think it's in Europe also. It's the 500 million Europeans, and I think finding Europe as the theme of the Republica this year. Finding Europe maybe means finding Europe on the local levels and start using the internet to rediscover your place in Europe, and maybe that is a nice equivalent to the developments in China. And so democracy is always staying a process; it's never finished.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.